really important that people believe in each other.
Yeah.
And the most obvious near-term place for that is your family. The second place is your friends. But of course, the workplace is another one with good managers and good leaders. But similarly, the second side to that statement is, your own relationship. Are you that person to someone else? Do you take the time to reach out to someone in your network and encourage them and tell them that you've seen what they're doing and you think it's great and that they need to keep going? Because on any given day, that person is probably going to be feeling like shit. Not through any fault of their own, just human psychology.
Yeah.
So what I also like about the statement is just a good nudge to remember that you can be that person to someone, and sometimes all it takes is a message.
Cat's involved. Oh, I love the cat.
Yeah.
What's
had to come up and say hello. This is
yeah.
Archie.
Oh my God, beautiful. What's her name?
He's Archie. He's a Ragamuffin.
Oh my God, absolutely stunning.
Very cool, very friendly breed. People like chunky animals, and look how enormous he is.
Oh wow, yeah, he's massive.
He's massive.
Yeah, what a cool cat though. Ragamuffin.
He's great. Ragamuffin, yeah, very good, chilled temperament. They're a bit like dogs.
Yeah. I look at people like Gary Vaynerchuk and a lot of these sort of YouTube style entrepreneurs, and they profess about working and over the course of your sort of entrepreneurial journey, do you find that the idea of working too hard can be a disadvantage at all?
Yeah, for sure. So the truth is, it's increasingly becoming known that just hustling and just hustle culture, it's not even just the wrong way round. Like, I think the best way to have a successful life, like Jim Collins said in the quote before, these things are about balance. So, I don't know enough about Gary Vaynerchuk's life, but it's really interesting if you delve down into, what are his actual relationships like? Does he have time with his wife? Does he have kids? I don't even know the answer to these questions, by the way, but he almost presents it like he doesn't have those things because too busy working. And you're like, why is that a successful life? That's not a successful life. That's not what life is about. That's one side. And if you've ever done any coaching or any vision and manifestation work, you've got some, there's so many different examples of this, but the wheel of life, right? And the wheel of life is all about, it's family, it's relationships, it's work. I definitely are on the side of workaholic, no doubt, and I'm not proud of that. It's just the reality of how things manifest in my life.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is, because of that behavior, I know for a fact that I have to force myself to rest. And by the way, rest is a very loaded term. Rest isn't just napping and sleeping. Rest is exercise. Rest is walking. Rest is listening to a book. Rest is watching TV. I'm currently watching all of the MCU, Marvel Universe films in 20 days. 20 films in 20 days with my wife. That is definitely rest. Doing these things are really important. So because I know my behavior is to overwork. I mean, here's an example. It's Saturday morning and you're the third conversation I've had.
Oh, wow.
But the point is, I'm enjoying it, and I try and do things that I enjoy anyway, especially if I'm going to do it on the weekend. But the other side of it is, I try and get into my calendar to rest. We do just have a burnout culture.
Yeah.
It's very stressful times at the moment. And people do not think about looking after themselves because it's seen as weak, and because there's this notion that someone else is there who's going to take your job and who's going to work harder than you. It's a really interesting balance. At the end of the day, what I would say is work ethic and grit are invaluable skills in life. They're so important, and it's so important to be able to show that you have those two things. But so is common sense and having a life. If you have a boss or a leader with a modicum of common sense, they'll know that if you don't have interests outside of work, you will force yourself to burn out. And when you burn out, you won't produce any good work, and you'll basically be a problem.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's a brotherhood. And in a brotherhood, if you really drill down to what a brotherhood is, it's a safe space. It's a place for you to be real. if you can't be real about how you're feeling, then you're going to get to the extreme. So making very, very multiple good points, but just that, your mental health is a giant spectrum. And in this spectrum, you've got big words like, I am depressed, I am anxious, I am feeling this thing right now. And when you express that stuff, it feels like it's going to be forever. But actually you're living in that moment, and tomorrow you might be twice as depressed, but you also might be half as depressed. And over a period of time, you might go sadly into oblivion, as lots of men commit suicide. But you also might come out the other side from not being depressed anymore over time, the best healer in the world, because you've got a support network, because you're looking after yourself. And, there's a lot of focus on those extreme moments. But actually, the thing that we were talking about together was a very undervalued and underappreciated area of mental health is this awareness that everyone has it, and that every day there's an opportunity to work on that through a wellness practice. The most fascinating thing about our brains is we're biologically, genetically set up to fail. It's really fascinating.
A lot of people I know have a default position of being negative towards things, and like you say, brain set up to fail. How do you sort of make that?
Well, let's just talk about it in a really simple way.
Yeah.
Given a choice, most people would rather just sit in bed all day watching TV.
Yeah.
That's we do all have that choice, but that kind of behavior is very commonly correlated with a depressed person's behavior as well. By the way, not saying that you are depressed if that's what you do at all, but this is extremely common behavior.
Yeah.
So, again, the reason is, and why we're genetically predisposed and built in a completely, inconvenient way. Our brains literally gravitate towards low energy. So our brains are the most energy intensive organs in our body. They use 20% of our energy and blood supply every single day. It's only about 3% of your body mass, so it's one of the smaller organs that takes up almost all of the energy that you actually need goes to your brain for behaviors and for actions. Now, when you create habits, a habit is essentially a short circuit of a behavior where your brain doesn't have to do any work. And when you are trying to do something, when you are putting in effort towards something, your brain is using lots of energy up, right? So interestingly, the things that challenge us, and this is where this idea of resilience and grit comes from, right? People who are successful in life, people who achieve things, people who, actually, tend to find success, financial success particularly, right? These are people that work against their brain every day to do things that they don't want to do. There is this, magical myth, I think, and I speak about this literally in my own experience.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
That I'm going to wake up tomorrow feeling like I want to get on the Peloton and have a bike ride. That I'm going to wake up tomorrow feeling like I want to do my day's best work. I'm going to wake up tomorrow feeling inspired. I wasn't today, but tomorrow I will be. That is mostly a myth. Most people do not wake up feeling that way at all. Most people wake up feeling the same way as each other, which is tired and a bit lethargic and kind of figuring out what they're going to do that day, etc. And at that moment you have a choice, which is to combat those feelings and go for it anyway, which is where grit and resilience comes from, which is basically all based on mindset, or taking it really easy again. The truth is, your brain wants you to do the latter. The thing about building a meaningful life is you've kind of got to avoid as many of the short-term distractions as you possibly can.
Yeah.
That's a million things, right? That's being lazy. That's not looking after yourself mentally or physically. That's not facing difficult conversations with people you don't want to have. It's easy to avoid all these things and trick yourself that things are going well because you haven't had a very challenging day, because things have gone well, and you feel good about those things that day because that's how dopamine works.
Yeah.
But the long term is you're not building any behaviors and activities that do help build your long-term resistance up to these things. And I just think it's possibly our biggest biological flaw in some respects, but in others, not to be totally cruel about it, but I've thought about this philosophically before, it's also very survival of the fittest, right?
Yeah.
It's like, if this shit was for everyone, everyone would do it. But it's not. It's not. And so, it's interesting because motivation has to come from within. Mindset has to come from within. You can't have other people telling you. You can have people coaching you, and you can have people setting examples and inspiring you. But ultimately, you're the only one that's going to get you out of bed in the morning, and you're the only one that's going to create those behaviors. Even as kids, the way that we are taught to ritualize things like skin care, hair care, oral care, nail care, if you're a woman, more so than man, but that's why I was biting my nails. Don't do it anymore, but I can't exactly be a poster boy for nail care. But these are areas that people think are important for personal care. Well, what's more important than looking after your brain?
Yeah,
so
totally agree. Man.
Yeah, so for us, like, brain care is personal care, and actually, once you look after your most important organ in your body as a priority every single day, everything else falls into place.